How great was that? So it is my thrill to bring up a couple of audience members this afternoon. Please welcome Joe Dante and John Goodman back to the stage.
I knew I wouldn't make it up here.
We're gonna have to share mics for a little bit. It's like I was asking for a drink, it was Coke. I mean, thanks so much for being here today. This is a real treat and honor for everyone here. Landon mentioned something in the introduction, and actually, somebody asked me in a late night conversation last night about why we do this, why we go out and find these films and bring these films to New Orleans and want to share them with people, and just where that passion comes from. And I think I rambled appropriately as it was very late at night. But watching this, I really realized I could have just quoted Matinee. And the end of the sequence when Woolsey and Jean are walking along and they're walking and talking, and then they reach the theater, and the camera just kind of floats through the theater, and we hear you saying, we enter into the darkness, anything could be in there, and you say, here I am, what do you have for me? I mean, it's all about the love and discovery. What was it like watching this movie after 30 years with an audience in a theater that's 100 years old and very well could have had some of those gimmicks in here?
Thanks, Joe. I haven't seen it for a long time, and it's fun. It just brought back how much fun I had shooting it. There's things I haven't thought of for a long time, and the cast was all great too. They're just great kids. Kathy was wonderful. Everybody. I got to meet, Dick Miller and Bill Fallon, and Kevin, and all these other guys. But I think what happened was I loved the character, and it worked. It's essential. I think you have to have something to love about the character. I just love this guy. He was just a con man, just like myself.
It was a lot of fun to make, and it was hot. But we were particularly lucky with kids because, our lead kid is British. He's not even American. We couldn't find any American kids that were good enough to picture. And so we found this British kid who had an impeccable American accent. And the other kids, I worked with on the Cats under Indiana. And Kevin Martin was doing a lot of television. Lisa Jacob done some other pictures. I think she retired. But it was just a fun group. And anytime you make a movie with kids, and I've made a lot of movies with kids, it's always rewarding because you always get something you didn't expect. And just looking at I've seen this movie a lot of times, more times than that, because I have to do transfers and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at their faces, you can see the acting, you can see the thinking going on. It's really impressive. But we were lucky to get to make this movie. It wasn't a studio movie; it was an independent movie that we were funding independently. We would go to Florida, and the payroll would come up at Tuesday, and then the funder would say, "Well, we don't have the money, but have Universal funded it. We'll be here next Tuesday." They never showed up at all. And Universal was already into it for some money. So we went to the heads of the company and we said, you guys have already spent some money on this picture. Why don't you just buy it and have it be a Universal picture? And then the honchos left the room. I came back and I said, passion has won out over reason. we will fund your movie. And I'm eternally grateful that this picture got made because it never would have gotten made any other way. And the only problem was that since it was a Universal picture, it had to open like a Universal picture, which meant saturation bookings all over the place. And early in 1993, and crickets chirped in the theater. I mean, there was just really not very many people who went to see it. But those who did, I found interesting, brought their kids to sort of show them what it was like to go to a single screen theater, which is a rarity now. And also what kind of movies that mom and dad used to watch. So that was rewarding.
I mean, it was quiet when it came out and released, but over the years, it has gathered this reputation as a film that people hold very
American home
close.
video.
But I mean, can you tell, like, could you feel over the years, like, MATINEE is getting more attention, people are asking me about this more and more.
It's become more popular, but that's true of almost every movie I ever made. It didn't exactly set the box office on fire. But then when they came out on home video, all of a sudden it was, oh, did you see this? And then somebody hands the cassette to their friends, and then they see it, and on video, and streaming, and these pictures get around. And I think that there's a lot of pictures, particularly from the 80s, that were not successful in theaters, but people think they were because they're so popular now.
I also have to say, a great guide to discovering older movies. Paying attention to the movie posters in the theater.
Those movies all played in that theater in the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yes, we did a lot of research. I mean, it's a very accurate movie. I mean, all the groupings, the military groupings on the beach, those are actually, it was like photos. I mean, it was literally duplicated everything that was in there. And all those movies played in that theater. It was called The Strand.
John, I heard a story that when you guys first started talking about the film, Joe had prepared like a clip reel of William Castle trailers and clips and was going to, wanted to explain and share who it was. And you kind of waved that off and said, no, I know who this guy is.
What an arrogant jerk. No, that was going to movies. What are you going to do? Go to movies? And those were the movies that were playing at my neighborhood theater called The Crest in Afton, Missouri. Sandwiched between a couple of beer joints. And that's what we did on Friday nights, Saturday nights. Matinees were great. That's what we saw. A big deal when like the Bill Castle movie would come out. The kids that's all they talk about in grade school. And they'd embellish on them too. You could see the blood dripping. Stuff that never happened, but in their imaginations, and it was enough to generate nightmares, which are great. But yeah, that was going to movies. That's the kind of stuff we saw.
We mentioned Cass, you were talking about the kids. Can we talk a little bit about Catherine Moriarty? She's so great in this, and she's so dry and funny and so over Woolsey's shenanigans.
Yeah, it was wonderful to work with her. I think I might have met her once before, but we have a lot of friends in common, and she was great. She was terrific to work with. And Jesse White.
Yeah, he's one of Jesse White's last pictures, if not his last picture. He's Mr. Spector, the theater guy. So perfectly cast. He could have played Sam Marquand.
I mean, I would love to just sit here and dominate and completely ignore the audience and talk to you guys. But that's just not fair. I wouldn't feel right about it. So I'd love to bring you guys into the conversation. If you want to raise some hands, and the first hand I saw was you right there.
Hi, I'm Joe Dante. Love the film and love the book, guys' work. And question about the film. In the theater room, how did you guys get the balcony fall off?
I was wondering, did we shoot anything in the Strand in Key West?
No. The theater in Key West was purely the exterior. And the interior we built on a soundstage at Universal. So when we were going to wreck it and back at Balcony Fall stuff, that was all stuff that we could, control. And it was quite an undertaking. I mean, most of the budget went to the scene with the balcony.
I love when the seats shoot up. Right over there.
wondering when we're gonna get a full-length Mant.
You know, when the picture came out, some foreign distributors said, you know, we'll give you some money if you want to finish Mant. And I had to try to explain to them that, you know, 20 minutes of Mant is one thing. 75 minutes of Mant is maybe something different.
Ben Gooley would love it. Did Kathy ever tell you that Bill Shallock was a butt pincher?
No, but I'm not surprised. Also, in the shook-up shopping cart, you may have noticed that's Naomi Watts.
Right there.
Was there ever any discussion of trying to do a Tomo vision during his initial release? Do any kind of remix?
Listen, we were lucky they actually made prints.
On the aisle?
I was the age of the little brother when Gremlins came out, and that's the movie that got me into movies. I was wondering, when you guys were that age, what were the movies that got you into movies? And thank you for Gremlins.
When I was the age of the kids in the movie. I just liked anything that played on Saturday. Anything, westerns, war pictures, horror pictures. I didn't care. I just loved movies.
John, was there any particular movie for you?
The main one I could think of is On the Waterfront. My Fair Lady.
Mr. Goodman, you've had such an incredible, long-spanning career. There's a tremendous amount of memes about you and everything like that. I'm curious, when people meet you kind of on the street, is there things that people ask you to quote, or that you're really sick of quoting?
How many young children do we have? Usually has instructions for Donnie to do something. Shut up. That's mainly it. Yeah.
Make sure I'm not ignoring the balcony. And it looks okay, so I'm going to go to the guy in the aisle right there.
This question is for Mr. Dante. I'm an aspiring filmmaker, and like he was saying, Gremlins, for me that was Gremlins 2, and that's the movie that really has inspired all of my filmmaking style as a student. And I was just wondering, what would you have as advice for making movies that are sort of supposed to be live action cartoons like that?
Well, it's difficult to give anybody advice about making movies these days because the process of making movies is so completely different than it was when I started. Not only getting them made, but getting them seen. It's a great time in the sense that the technology has expanded to a point where you can almost make anything, but you also have to get it seen, and you can't just put it up on YouTube and hope somebody finds it. I demur every time I'm asked this now because it's just my advice is so old and so dated about getting into the business and what is it like and what do you have to do, and just be true to yourself and make movies that speak to you. Don't make movies that speak to somebody else. If it doesn't speak to you, you shouldn't be making it.
I mean, interesting tidbit. This shares the same screenwriter, but Gremlins 2.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Haas.
Charlie Haas wrote this too.
I'll go over here. How about you?
Alright, so guys, with this movie being filmed involving like theatrical experiences add on to like the cinema going experience like what William Castle used to do, what has been your ultimate dream in terms of like creating an immersive experience for like a cinematic audience or something like that? Like what's been something you wanted to add to like the films that you released to kind of have that like 3D or like extra third feelings?
Well, for me, the movies that I've made are the movies I've made. I don't go back and change them. I'm not George Lucas. I don't have an answer for that.
Do you have a particular special gimmick, either of castles or, nowadays we have Atmos and 4D and all of this?
Well, have you tried the what's the one where they shake the camera?
40X.
4DX. Yes. I saw San Andreas that way. Very appropriate.
Right there?
So one thing I really appreciate about Gremlins is this mix of sincerity and this weird pessimism mixed with optimism. So what's your kind of outlook on that? Like, do you want to be optimistic or pessimistic?
No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's just absurdist. It's about, life is absurd. Everything about life is absurd. And all my movies are absurd. I find the absurdity in everything. I mean, Matinee is a story that probably couldn't really happen, but you know, it's pretty convincing all the time.
But if you get to the heart, I mean, it feels so true, and I think that speaks to the performances too. I mean, it's so believable, even as you know, seats aren't going to shoot out of the ground when the balcony falls. We have time for a couple of more questions. I'm going to go right there.
So my question is for Mr. Goodman. You've been in so many iconic roles, from this to Donnie to the Reverend Gemstone. My question is, what's your favorite performance you've given, or one that you think of often fondly?
It changes. Anytime I work for Joel and Ethan Cohen, that's great because they write well. Right now, the one that makes me happiest was a play that I did in London about 8 years ago. Everything worked, but it may be the next thing. I don't know. I don't have favorites. Shoot you. Oh, American Buffalo.
We'll go in the corner there with the hat and glasses. Take us out.
Yeah, was there any characters you modeled off of anybody?
Was there any who that you modeled off of it?
Were there any characters that you modeled off of anybody? Like any
Well, the lead character is modeled on a real person.
In addition to William Castle, I think I read somewhere you had a few other independent filmmakers in mind.
Well, there are a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, there are a lot of people who used to take their films around with lecturers and the gimmicks, and they sold like in tents. They went around and showed the movies, and it was a way of getting the movies in front of the public and not having to make many prints. And so there's Roger Corman, Ray Dennis Stecker, Dave Friedman. I mean, there's a whole lot of these guys who have very colorful careers. But I think Castle kind of took from all those guys.
What they knew about showmanship. And you know who else knows about showmanship? You guys. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for being here.